Invader Zim was a cartoon created by comic book writer Jonan Vasquez that ran on Nickelodeon for a surprisingly short 27 episodes, about an obnoxiously and delusionally confident alien named Zim, who's given a fake mission to invade Earth by his leaders in the hopes that he never returns. Armed with a faulty robot companion named Gur and a heaping helping of incompetence, he routinely fumbles his half-baked plans for world domination. Originally, I planned on giving a full recap of all 27 episodes, digging into the meat of the story and theorizing where things could have gone if the show hadn't been canceled. But after watching 11 hours of Invader Zim, I learned, firstly, that the show is not that deep, and secondly, that a major theme of the series is that everything is so gross all the time. So since there isn't a huge amount of consequences or continuity to keep track of, I instead am going to give you an uncomfortably detailed rundown of the grossest episodes of Invader Zim, from nasty to nastiest. Number 6, the least gross of the bunch, is Bolognius Maximus. Zim picks suspiciously at his school lunch. School spelled S-K-O-O-L, by the way. As hard as he's trying to fit in with the humans, he hasn't quite gotten the hang of Earth food. In fact, he seems to have a pretty adverse reaction to it that usually involves some sort of sizzling and retching. His human nemesis, Dib, the only person who isn't oblivious to Zim's alien nature, points out that anybody paying any actual attention to Zim would have noticed by now that Zim doesn't eat any of the food. To cover his own ass, Zim lies and says he's already eaten and is completely full of what he calls delicious human filth. Dib then throws a slice of bologna at Zim's head, which burns Zim's flesh, causing it to sizzle and form some sort of bumpy rash as he flails around on the floor. The next day, Zim still has the bologna and the bologna-induced rash on his forehead, and he hasn't seemed to have moved past his anger about it, because he gets his revenge in the form of what seems to be, well, just a tack on Dib's chair. A little painful, but not very effective. It's over time that we, the audience, and Dib, realize that the tack is much more than it seems. The first sign of something strange is the sudden attraction that stray dogs have to Dib. Packs of them start following him around, sniffing, then surrounding, before finally trying to get a taste of him. When one of them bites Dib, he sucks on the wound and, very strangely, notes that he tastes delicious. Even stranger, the other kids in the class cannot handle Dib's new smell. It's a gag-inducing, nose-holding kind of smell that they describe as sandwichy, and it doesn't wear off even when he's sent away to wash the smell away. It's then that the tack that Zim had put on Dib's chair falls out of Dib, and he realizes that it's alien technology that's changing him in some way. He does some quick analyzing of the tech that tells him that the same substance that's lining the tack is also now present in his cells. What DNA is being fused with Dib's? Well, if you haven't already been able to guess from the context clues and the title, it's baloney. That's right, Dib is slowly turning into baloney. And with no cure, what choice does he have but to surrender to his meaty fate? Or, of course, he could turn the tables back on Zim. A slightly rounder Dib tricks Zim into a handshake, sticking the alien with his own technology. So now, unless Zim wants to become Baloney Boy as well, and who does, he has to find a cure for their problem. Doesn't mean he'd be willing to share with Dib, though. So Zim hurries to his lab in the hopes of engineering a serum to reverse the effects of the baloney DNA, only to be locked out of his own technology because he's seen as an intruder now that he's more baloney than Zim. Something about his alien DNA is making the process work much faster than it does on humans. This leaves Zim no choice but to give in and ask for a momentary truce to team up with Dib. They need to find that cure. Over the time it takes for their experiments, they grow more and more meat-like, their bodies getting rounder, pudgy, kind of bloated looking, and shiny with that sort of sheen that a loaf of meat gives off. By the time they think they've made the proper cure, Zim is pretty much almost in the shape of a log of bologna. Dib doesn't wait, rips the cure out of Zim's hands, downs it, and turns into basically a stick of bologna with arms, legs, and a face. It seems like there's not much more time for him. The failure of their cure prompts Dib and Zim into an argument that escalates into a chase that lands them outside the house, surrounded by the pack of hungry dogs. They run for their lives, with their little shuffling bologna bodies, and take shelter in an old, abandoned, boarded-up house, where they both complete their full transformations into big, faceless rolls of bologna covered in flies. And that is how this episode ends. What a load of bologna. A little grosser than the bologna boys is number 5, Germs. Zim and his robot Gur are watching a generic action movie where aliens are invading the Earth. Like plenty of alien movies before it, the desperate scientists find out the aliens' weakness is actually quite simple. They can't handle human germs. Outwardly, Zim finds it laughable, calls the movie human propaganda. But the possibility of it obviously bothers him, and he runs down to his lab to try out some germ-spotting micro-goggles. What they help Zim see is absolutely horrific to him. This invisible enemy, these germs, are all over every surface of his lab, ceiling, floor, his equipment, everything. Even worse, the rest of his house is totally infested too. But Zim won't let himself lose this battle for world domination this easy. Equipping his mop, brush, and anti-germ spray, he scrubs down every surface in his house, not stopping until he can't find even the smallest bit of bacteria. All while he's been doing this, Gur has brought over a mud-covered pig to play around with, because he's always got to be getting up to some random, inconvenient bullshit. That's his way. Zim is just stopping to bask in his accomplishment of defeating the germs when Gur says goodbye to his pig friend, actually. Germs roll off of Gur in a giant puddle, covering the floor, leaking out from underneath the door. All of Zim's cleaning was for nothing. When Zim freaks out about the undoing of his work, Gur decides the best way to calm his master down is with a well-intentioned yet menacing germ-covered hug. Screaming, Zim flees the house, only to realize that the outside world is practically nothing but germs. No matter how much he sprays, it can never be enough. He regroups, donning a shower cap, arm-length rubber gloves, protective overalls, and tissue box shoes. But there's one problem. Zim's about to run out of disinfectant. How's he supposed to protect himself without it? This leaves him no choice. He'll have to brave the outside world, and even scarier, take filthy, germ-covered Gur with him to pick up cleaning supplies from the store. Taking Gur is actually what seems to end up being Zim's undoing. They make it to the store, but when barely anything but dribble is coming out of Zim's disinfectant, Gur snatches it out of Zim's hands to try to fix it himself, and immediately gets distracted by the glow of the nearby fast food restaurant, McMeaty's. He takes off towards it, forcing Zim to come running after him and face the horror of the disgusting restaurant. With his glasses on, Zim can't help but see every bit of bacteria in the place. On the patrons, on the booths they're sitting at, even in the food they're chewing. He's surrounded. Finally, he finds Gur so he can ask where his disinfectant's gone. Useless as he is, or whatever the opposite of useless is, maybe maliciously incompetent, Gur has lost the anti-germ spray. He does offer Zim his burger, though. Zim flinches, already anticipating the food to be slathered in bacteria like everything else in the building. But on second inspection, the burger is somehow completely clean. He questions the cashier about it, causing the cashier to launch into a story about anti-germ space meat that actually ends up being pointless as like a bit. So I'm going to bypass that, because he essentially tells Zim that they make their meat out of napkins. Zim is elated. He's finally found a way to completely protect himself from the germs without bringing any attention to himself. He tests his theory out the next day at school, coming to class covered head to toe in McMeaty's napkin-based meat. Not the least bit suspicious at all. Good job, my dude. Here's a real gooey episode for y'all. Number 4, Career Day. It is, as the title suggests, Career Day at Zim's school. The kids have to take an aptitude test to get placed with a representative of their most likely career prospect. Zim, despite his desire for world domination, has been paired with a fast food worker, and Dib, to his excitement, has been paired with a paranormal investigator. This paranormal investigator isn't exactly what Dib hoped he'd be, though. The guy, Bill, is a whole lot less Mulder, and a whole lot more the kind of crazy conspiracy theorist that all of Dib's classmates make him out to be. In his case files, Bill has Bigfoot, ghosts, and dinosaurs all labeled as fake. The guy believes in Count Coco Fang, the universe's version of Count Chocula, over the existence of prehistoric life. Another file Bill has labeled as fake is the galactic equinox theory. At 5 o'clock that very day, the galaxies are going to be perfectly aligned. Other paranormal investigators have theorized that this will make all alien life forms living off their home planets go through a hideous molt, which Dib has already seen signs of happening to Zim. There's a strange rash of bumps on Zim's neck that have been seeming to spread. While he's helping out in the kitchen, Zim itches at the bumps, and they spray a green goo onto the fries they're going to serve to their customers. Dib has to get to MacMeady's before 5 o'clock so he can finally prove the existence of aliens to someone who has a slightly better chance of believing him. As luck would have it, he finally convinces Bill to take him to MacMeady's, and they're just about to get there in time when they drive by a Count Coco Fang fan meetup, and Bill is so distracted by wanting to kill the cereal mascot that he misses the molting event. It's really quick, too. For one moment, it seems like Zim's rash is cleared up, before the skin of his neck starts to bulge out in a sack sort of way, and it just does not stop. He looks like he's turning into a giant sack of fluid, but it's just his skin expanding to fill the whole restaurant, throbbing and pressing the customers up against the windows, wanting to break free. Zim's molting body expands so far it starts to escape the building as well, flooding out of the drive-thru and up through the ceiling. Like, imagine if you had green slime in your hand, and then you squeeze it as hard as you can. It only has one place to go, and that's the gap in your hand. That's what's happening to Zim. But by the time Dib gets Bill to MacMeady's, it's finished. All of Zim's skin and goo and whatever the hell sucks right back into place like nothing ever happened. Dib's plan to prove aliens are real is dashed yet again. The episode that comes in at 3rd place on the grossness ranking is Rise of the Zit Boy. Nickelodeon sure loves big, nasty pimples, don't they? There's something with them and gross-out goo moments. Which may or may not actually get to you, depending on your mileage, I guess. This list is very subjective. A captivatingly large pimple might be less revolting than baloney boys to some people. Anyway, Zim gets an alert from his house defense system that there's an intruder approaching and has to thwart the plans of a suspiciously big squirrel that turns out to be Dib in a costume. He boasts that Dib will never be able to get past his defenses, but, rubbing his knowledge in Zim's face, Dib points out that there might be a flaw or two that Zim's not so aware of, then dips. At the same time, a pizza delivery man knocks on Zim's door. Gur, ever unhelpful, has ordered food to their home without Zim's permission. They're supposed to be keeping humans away from their home, not inviting them over. Gur ignores Zim's worries, ripping his pizza into 2 halves and going on to eat it in a way that's just super unpleasant to witness. Tons of open-mouthed chewing, letting the pizza slide down his face so he's sopping in crazy amounts of grease. He then jumps on Zim, rubbing his pizza grease all over poor Zim's face until Zim is soaked in it. Zim tries to wash it off, but while using he calls it cleansing chalk, but it's just soap. He finds out that Gur has, for some reason, put a slice of bacon in it. So basically, Zim's been trying to clean his face with even more grease. And it's too late for him. A pimple is already formed. normal in size. That is, until Zim tries to use acne cream on it, and the zit absorbs the tube of cream whole, swelling to the size of a cantaloupe. He curses Gur for the bad advice, though he can't seem to spot Gur anywhere in the room. When Zim turns to the side, he and the audience get the reveal that Gur is swimming in the fluid of Zim's pimple, causing it to become closer to the size of a basketball. It shrinks down a bit, not much, when Gur exits the pimple. You can still see the pus through the clear bubble of Zim's skin, though, and it is gnarly. Zim realizes pretty fast that a zit that size is going to make his mission to blend in with the humans a hell of a lot harder. Everybody will be staring at him. So what can he do to help with that? While Zim's complaining, Gur starts doodling a face onto Zim's pimple. Zim freaks, yelling at Gur to stop and get away. And you know what? Usually there is no getting Gur to correctly follow orders. But Zim's newly personified pimple transfixes Gur, putting him into some sort of trance, and he obeys without question. This gives Zim an idea. If his zit's hypnotism powers work on humans too, he might be able to get Dib to spill what he knows about the flaws in Zim's security system. It's perfect. For some reason, he decides that he needs to give his pimple a costume first. I don't know. He hangs a little suit off of it, naming it Postulio. So Zim, armed with Postulio, sets off on his mission and ends up hypnotizing all of the kids in the schoolyard. They trail after him like a pack of peaceful, tranced-out zombies, alerting Dib to the fact that something's definitely up. Someone has to stop Zim before it's too late, and since the only kids that aren't hypnotized yet are Dib and his sister Gaz, and the fact that Gaz could give less than a fuck about all of this, the responsibility lands on Dib. He tries to warn the others not to look at Postulio, that he's not even a person, just a hypnotic pimple, but they're too far gone in their trances. Zim tries to lure him into looking at Postulio, but Dib won't give up his free will that easily. One of the hypnotized horde tackles and restrains Dib, and it seems like they're all going to be playing a waiting game, because despite being captured, Dib refuses to open his eyes. Turns out the best lore Zim could possibly give is just by being his stupid self. He says Dib will have to open his eyes at some point. How else will he be able to breathe? Dib is so perplexed by the fact that Zim thinks humans require their eyes to breathe that he accidentally looks at Zim's face and unfortunately falls under the spell of Postulio. No matter how hard he fights, he can't break free of the pull of the pimple either. His want to please Postulio forces Dib to give up his secret. Zim's gnome field has a blind spot. There's nothing to stop Dib from just tunneling under the ground to reach Zim's base. Zim is just about to celebrate his victory when his pimple starts swelling larger and larger. First bigger than his head, then so big it practically fills the classroom, before finally popping with such force that the fluid, pus, whatever you want to call it, wreaks havoc on the school. The pus breaks the windows, floods the halls, creates a pool in the classroom, and poor Dib is left with the cleanup job. Number 2, and rewatching this one actually made my skin crawl, so you're welcome, is lice. This one starts in a way I'm sure you can guess. One of Zim's classmates has lice. Lice that we get a real good look at. Zoomed completely in on the boy's individual hair follicles with all the microscopic bugs crawling on and chewing at his scalp. Where the rest of it leads, I think, is a whole lot less predictable as time goes on. The rest of the class, aside from Zim, gets infested almost immediately, and their teacher, Miss Bitters, calls in the Delouser, Countess von Vermenstrausser, to handle it. She quarantines them in the school, electrocuting them if they try to escape. Her methods of treatment range from pretty standard to torture. Shaving their hair, monkey grooming, ducking kids headfirst into vats of anti-lice formula, and some sort of shampoo electric shock therapy. It's all worth it in the Delouser's eyes. The mission she's on is bigger than any of them. This outbreak might finally be proof she needs of the Lice Queen. Funnily enough, Dib gets to play the skeptic for once, because he thinks the delouser is crazy. She must be blowing things way out of proportion. There is no such thing as a Lice Queen. While Dib is trying to evade the delouser, Zim is being tested in the immunity research room. And by tested, I mean getting a few layers of his skin scraped off with an electric cheese grater. The delouser finally has Dib cornered when the floor of the classroom collapses out from underneath them all, revealing a tunnel system underneath the school and the humongous queen of the lice sitting on top of her nest. No debating whether or not it's real now that the giant queen is stomping her way towards them. How is anybody supposed to get out of this one? Zim's immunity, of course. One of the delouser's assistants did experiments with Zim's skin samples and found out that his skin destroys lice. So, the delouser loads Zim into this combination blender/spray gun that basically blends up Zim to be able to spray his juices all over the queen and her nest and kill them. After all the lice are exterminated, the delouser pulls Zim out of the spray gun, showing off his peeled, mangled, fleshy green body as he wails in pain. Finally, we have my personal choice for the grossest episode of Invader Zim, Dark Harvest. Out on the playground, Zim gets hit with a dodgeball, doubling over and complaining about the pain in his squeedly spooch, which obviously catches Dib's attention. Humans don't have squeedly spooches. Using the X-scope glasses that he ordered from Crop Circle magazine, he X-rays in on Zim's insides that are noticeably arranged and made differently than any normal human body. Dib is the only one who knows about this, though, and since everyone else is quick to call him crazy, he would need at least one other witness to Zim's strange biology. He might just get exactly what he wants, too, because later on in class, Zim gets head pigeons. No, I did not misspeak. Zim has a pigeon that will knock it off his head, which means he'll have to take a trip to the nurse's office, much to Dib's delight. He mocks Zim, points out that if the nurse has to do an exam on Zim, she'll find out he doesn't have any human organs, and you know what that means. It won't be long before Zim ends up on an alien autopsy table. Incompetent as he is, Zim is nothing if not determined. He'll do anything to not be found out, even if that means he has to steal his classmates' organs and insert them into his own body. That's right, Zim gets into organ harvesting this episode. He uses a special piece of alien tech that zaps whatever organ he wants out of a kid's body and replaces it with some random object. Here are some instances for you. Zim steals the hall monitor's liver and replaces it with a hall pass. He swaps the receptionist's brain for a can of soda. A kid gets a ruler where his spine used to be. Another has an alarm clock instead of a heart. After their classmates start showing signs of being horribly ill, it doesn't take Dib long to put the pieces together that Zim is behind it. It would be impossible to notice anyway because Zim has drastically changed in appearance. He is swollen with stolen organs. Every time his mouth opens to talk, you can see a peak of intestines that have nowhere else to be since he is so packed full of everybody else's parts. In fact, he burps, and those intestines in question roll out of his mouth like a ribbon unspooling onto the floor. He then proceeds to slurp them back up like spaghetti. A visual so burnt into my brain that I can see it even now. The only human organ Zim hasn't collected is a pair of lungs. Dib tries to protect the last healthy student, but in a moment of oblivious rambling about aliens, he loses the boy and Zim completes his collection. Or has he? He doesn't own any of Dib's parts yet. And there's no escaping Zim. New bloated size or not, he uses his mechanical spider-like leg backpack attachments to skitter through the ceiling vents, keeping perfect track of his prey. Poor Dib gets a Moobox toy inserted into his body, and won't get the satisfaction of anyone catching on to Zim's crimes, because the school nurse, She says that Zim is the most healthy student she's ever seen. What plentiful organs he has. What an interesting rewatch. The first and only time I had watched Invader Zim before this was in elementary school, so like a million years ago, and I totally get why it would have appealed so much to me then. It made a point of being dark, off-putting, and strange. And when you feel so different than your classmates, like everyone can sense what's weird about you, but you can't, you sort of find a belonging in things that celebrate weirdness. Now, it's a little too screechy and random for me, which really puts into perspective how much I think I've changed since then, and makes you think, how many different versions of yourself do you become over the years? What I still appreciate about Invader Zim is its creativity. Also, probably had a hand in me becoming a horror fan later on when you watch episodes like Dark Harvest. How long it's been culturally relevant, too, is also impressive. There's still Gur merch in every hot topic. As long as malls exist, I think you'll be able to find some reminder of Invader Zim there. That has to mean something. What else means something is that you stuck around till the end of this episode. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed it, maybe consider liking and subscribing. I'll catch up with you all in the next one. Bye-bye.